Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Lightspeed Lawn Care Marketing Podcast. I am sitting down today with a returning guest from way back in the day when the YouTube channel was still it looked real bad. Anyone who was watching then, thank you so much for hanging around. We're sitting down with Jay Worth of SingleOps, and we are going to be talking about hiring because when I think about hiring and company culture issues in the lawn care industry, I know that Jay and I have very aligned values in that space. And so I love to get you on to get your opinion on hiring. And I know that you have a lot of skills in the marketing arena. And so I thought that we could, kind of butt our heads together here and see what we can come up with to help guys find people now that we're in the spring rush.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me back on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So what we are going to be talking about this week is using paid ads to find top quality lawn care and landscaping employees. And I think the first hurdle that we're going to have to overcome here is convincing people that they should spend money to find employees. I think it's hard enough to convince people to spend money to find work, let alone spend money to find someone to pay money. So I think we'll kind of dive in there and talk about why people should use paid ads to find employees.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. And I would say I'll couch all of this first, and I'm sure we'll dive into this later, but for people who are not convinced, or skeptical of marketing in general, because we hear that a lot in the industry, right? They say, oh, marketing doesn't work. I would suggest that you're probably doing it wrong. But, keeping the type of person you want to recruit in mind, your ideal candidate is a really important part of making sure that this is successful. But the same reason you use paid ads is the same, or the reason you use paid ads is the same reason you use paid ads if you're looking for work, because you're trying to catch people who are actively looking for something that you have to offer. Mm-hmm. It's that simple, right? Like if somebody is actively job seeking and you have a need in your company, why would you not want your company's information in front of that searcher?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, we talk about kind of the difference between Facebook ads, Facebook and Instagram ads where the market is cold and we're having to warm them up, and a market like Google ads where it's hot and the lead doesn't need to be warmed up. They're ready to make a buying decision. They searched lawn care in my area to get this ad in front of them. When you're just sort of like passively putting it out into the world that you need employees, that's a cold thing. You're having to warm people up. And you have marketplaces like Indeed where people are actively looking for a job. They're doing the equivalent of typing lawn care in my area into Google, and you're going to have to spend to beat out everyone else who's trying to get in front of them. And I think one thing we have talked about before is that, part of that is going to be paying people competitively to get them to care about your job, which means 100%. that listing needs to have pay in it. And I know that it's a legal requirement in some states now that a job posting have the compensation range listed, but I think you should have it regardless of where you're at.
I couldn't agree anymore. You and I work in kind of a tech space, right?
Yeah.
I'm a green industry guy at heart. I just happen to work for a software company. So it's like by accident, not by, but no, I work there because I think it's a good place, but I work in tech by accident. I work there because they needed somebody with green industry experience. If you look at Adobe's most recent, Adobe conducts a study every year, a workplace study. And it's people that have either recently graduated college or about to graduate college. So you're talking your 21, let's say, to 24-year-olds, right? They conduct this study every year. And this year's, I want to say it was some outrageous number. It was like 85 or 90% of respondents in the survey. And I'm talking, it was like 1,500 people, 2,000. It was a big survey. You can Google it. Google Adobe Workforce Study 2023. The most recent one, it was like 90% of people won't apply for a job unless the salary range is listed. Now, yeah. You might want to hire a 35-year-old to work frontline, but chances are you want somebody like, I'm 41. You might want to hire me. I'm not going to produce. I can produce, but I'm not going to produce the way a 22-year-old is. I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof when I was 22, right? Like, so yeah, these are the people that you want to apply for your jobs, and they're not going to do it unless you list that range.
I mean, it's hard to there's such a wide range in the green industry of what people think is an acceptable wage. Why would you waste your time finding out that, oh, this company pays $10 an hour? I'm not going to, now I've sat through an interview, I've done all of this, and there's no reason for me to be here. I'm just going to go with the 4 other companies that did list the compensation range, and it was, acceptable to me.
Absolutely. Last year, 2022, a competitor of ours, Jobber, they have some kind of an integration. They had a partnership with some HR platform. Mm-hmm. And they did a study across this HR platform's entire thing and found that the average salary for a landscape worker in the United States was $14.63 an hour. I'd recently spoke at the Synced Live conference in Atlanta back in February, and I did some original research. I was actually speaking about recruiting and retention. I did some original research from a website called talent.com. And the reason I used that is it told you the number of openings in each state. It told you the salary rate, the average salary for that state. And then it told you the high and low. I mean, there was all this data. So you could see how many data points there were in each state, job openings, what the average range was for that state. And then so I created a spreadsheet and I put in all 50 states. The average salary is $14.91. Now, that doesn't sound like totally unreasonable, but I wanted to compare it to other industries, right? So general laborers, like your temp workers that are literally hired to just like pick up 2x4s and move them from one side of a construction site to another, and they get paid same day. They make $15.38 an hour. Fast food workers make $17 and what was it, 20 cents an hour. They make $2.29 an hour more than landscapers. Don't say people don't want to work. People will work. They're just going to work where they get paid. Go pay them. If you're having trouble recruiting, maybe you need to think about, am I paying more than the McDonald's down the street or the Five Guys or whatever? Because you might not.
You need to think, if that is your competition, then when you're writing your job post, and we do this for people, is like, you need to think about, what are the pain points of working at a McDonald's or a Burger King? And it's probably going to be that you're, treated like absolute garbage, because you're considered disposable. There's not, there's a token opportunity for advancement, but really there's not. There's one manager for 30, 40 employees. You're not going to be the special one. So you need to lean into the pain points of this job and get people to think oh, this landscaping job is better than being at McDonald's. There's more opportunity for advancement here. People will view me as more professional if I come over here. Think about what people don't like about the positions they're in that are your direct competition for getting people in the door. And then let's dive into how paying for hiring ads is going to help you find better talent. Because I think part of what we're focusing on here is the thing that you and I always talk about, that you need to pay people better. You need to have a better culture. And I think we're I'm directing us away from the plot of the episode, because I'm hoping that people are on the fence about hiring ads. So we need to push them over the edge there.
Let's do it. You and I, we'll throw them over, man. Come on.
Yeah. So how do these ads help you find better talent? I think it's pretty obvious what you've already said about, it's a hot marketplace for where people are already looking for jobs. So obviously you're going to get people who are motivated to apply.
Mm-hmm. So I think that you've got, some really good points here. And I think, you get a larger pool depending on where you're looking for. If you're using a job board site, you're probably getting people that are already actively looking. So you get a broader pool of applicants. But I think you've got your keywords kind of dialed in. And to your point, the verbiage in your ads really talks about pain points. And maybe you create ones for different things. Maybe you create a couple of different versions of it. If that, for instance, I lived in a community one time where 2 out of every 5 jobs was warehouse workers. I mean, it was just a crazy amount because it was right near the intersection of several different major highways. And so there was just warehouses, Amazon and everything else under the sun, all in one place. And so, there was just tons of warehouse work. Guess what? Those warehouse workers are your competition. So address, that pain point specific to that. Just think about what it is. When you get those keywords dialed in and you got the ad copy dialed in, the other thing you can do, and this is maybe a bit more tactical than strategic, but I don't know if you've ever done this, Cody, or done it successfully. But But one of the things I thought about in using paid ads, it's not just paid ads like Google ads, but you can pay for geofencing around competitors that people are unhappy with. So like if you run a lawn care company and there's a couple of True Green branches in your area, chances are there's some disgruntled True Green people, like those offices. So that way when people are on their phone and they're like looking at something, they get served an ad. Or sometimes when geofencing works, where you can, if the phone enters the building, it'll serve them an ad later when they leave. And so I thought about that. I thought about poaching competitors that way.
The first time I saw what became like the whole basis for my targeting model for Lightspeed was a friend who owned a lawn care business showing me his ads specifically targeting the building that his competitor worked out of.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of transitions us into a good opportunity to talk about how you can use Facebook in this, because Facebook is not my like core hiring platform to run. We, write job postings, do ads for people, and do that like first level of screening. And we do all of that on Indeed. And
Okay. Wow.
I have not had like fantastic luck with the job postings on Facebook. It's a little more restrictive. They're more restrictive than your normal Facebook ads because the way that they want to comply with like equal opportunity law is to not let you target the ad at all, which means like you can't even target it to, we want people that live in a reasonable radius where like we don't want to have commuting problems. We want people who live near the shop. So what I have helped people do to skirt some of that is write the ad not explicitly as, here is a job, come work here. It's more like, it's brand awareness, and it's
we're always looking for good people. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're always looking for good people, that kind of thing. That's not an explicit job posting, but dumps them to your careers page.
Yep.
And then you can have individual job postings once they get there. But that's going to let you use all of Facebook's like really tactical targeting to work from, people who live in a certain radius of the shop. That's like a good commute. Maybe even worst case scenario, they could walk if the car broke down.
Yeah.
But what I would use Facebook for here is not like, I wouldn't even really track the number of people who came in through Facebook and became applicants. I would set a really low budget that I was comfortable spending, in the same way that like, you might have to pay the coffee shop to put up a sign on the bulletin board, and just be like, hey, we know that this is not super great. We're just hoping it's one more touch in the hiring process. In the same way that like you put out a yard sign and you don't know, 6 people called because of this yard sign because they told us that they saw a yard sign. Like no one's going to call and tell you that. So it's just like a little bit of a sunk cost.
Yeah. And I think that that's something like you have to keep in mind when you're doing any kind of marketing, right? You have two buckets. You've got lead gen and you've got brand awareness.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have. So like get out of your head, once you recognize brand awareness for what it is, like it's making sure that people are aware of your community, your name in the community. So like your Little League sponsorships, right? Or sponsoring the local marching band, or all these things that you do because you're a good active member in the community that you serve. Don't expect those to turn into leads. You can't look at that and say, oh, well, I didn't get, that ad didn't pay for itself. Well, guess what? That ad paid for itself 50 times over. It's just that that's not the last touch people remembered. It's that they've been taking their kids to play softball and seeing that banner in the outfield for the last 3 years, and now they have a need. Yeah. And so then they come to you, right? Because that you're top of mind, but they're going to say, oh, I Googled you. Because they Googled your phone number, right? So as soon as you get that out of your head as the business owner or the business manager, somebody who's running these efforts, HR manager, Facebook is not a lead gen source. And in this case, a lead being a candidate, it's not a lead gen source. It's brand awareness. I couldn't agree anymore. And that's so like, as I was looking over the notes for what that we were going to talk about in the show here, it said, why do we like Facebook? I have targeting in all caps. Like that's it. That's the only good reason to use Facebook for anything even approaching this, is because it's got really powerful targeting options that, to your point, if you're doing an actual job posting, are really restrictive. But if you're just doing, hey, here's our company, here's what our culture is like, here's what we're about, and then it can drop them onto a page on your website where they can apply. That's very, very powerful. And that would be the only reason I would use that, is for that brand awareness. And you might get some leads from it, but that's not the primary purpose.
Just, spend $20 a month, just getting that.
Whatever you can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends on how desperate your need is.
Yeah, for sure. But then let's talk a little bit about ads on Indeed, just to give people an idea of what the platform looks like. And I don't know how familiar you are with using Indeed for hiring, but I'll kind of lay out once the ambulance quits going by.
I can't hear it, so.
Oh, okay. We might be good then. So on Indeed, you're able to, write like a pretty bog standard job description and a job title. And the job title is going to be your headline. That is what people see when they are first presented with the job. So you have to think about, what should this be to get the click? Just like, you have to think about it in a marketing mindset. And I think a lot of guys get hung up not thinking about it that way.
I agree.
Then job description, like we already talked about, you want to lean on pain points. Again, this is a marketing piece. This is not an employment piece. This is selling someone on working for you. Then we're going to have, just kind of a bullet pointed list of benefits. That is why they should work there. If you're doing pay for performance or something like that, this is an opportunity to explain that a little bit. And then you have opportunity to have photos or videos on the posting. A video here that's a company intro from the owner is a great way to present like a more personable brand. And you could reuse this video in those top level Facebook ads. So that you've got multiple opportunities to get them to watch this video, because not everybody's going to click the first time they see it, but it gives you an opportunity to introduce them to the company, kind of show them what the work will look like. This is going to, for anyone who's already in the green industry, who's looking for red flags, this is an opportunity to address those for them. So you want them to see that the trucks are in good repair. You want them to see that the equipment is clean, that employees have nice uniforms. They're not wearing, raggedy, falling apart shirts. Everything that you can address their pain point wise with their current, if they're already in the green industry, you want to cover all your bases, cover those red flags for them.
Yeah. And I would just say too, I know that like a lot of your customer base is lawn care, but if you're maybe a full service landscaper and you offer something like tree care, make sure if you're showing videos of your equipment that you've got good pictures of like the harnesses and the climbing gear and stuff like that too, because the quickest way to an arborist's heart is through shiny gear, right? Like they love seeing that you invested in them. But I think that holds true pretty much across the industry. Like people get into this partly because they like the equipment. So yeah, that's a great call out. I love that.
We dove into Indeed because I liked their ad platform best when I started experimenting. And to be honest, I didn't go dive into any of the other ones because Indeed worked.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of experience with ZipRecruiter. It felt really convoluted when I went in and tried to use it. I'd heard all the podcast ads for it. And then it was like, it's going to post on all of these job boards that no one's ever heard of. And I was like, I don't really know what the value of that is.
Yeah, it's like an aggregator. It's just weird.
Yeah. And then I'm paying the aggregator to...
On Indeed, I think the only like caution based on my experience is I don't know how you have, and you can probably speak to this better than I can. I think you covered and that was one of the things that I had a concern about. I was like, you have to make sure that the actual ad posting itself is super dialed in. I think it's a great call out to put like, here's what it's going to list. So like if you're hiring for a lawn care tech, you don't necessarily need to make the job title lawn care tech. Yeah. Right? Like you want somebody to click it, and that's the first thing they're going to see. So put a thing in there that's a little bit more dynamic, I mean, unless you're looking for somebody with experience, and you may not want that. You may want somebody you can train from scratch. So whatever that is, just make sure that's really dialed in. And I would just focus on more career type language than employment type language, if that makes sense. It's kind of a fine distinction, but people who are serious about like growing with your company, as opposed to, I just need the next thing to get me where I'm going. But I think the thing to watch out for is just the tire kickers, like maybe the people that they're disinterested with their current job, but aren't like ready to make a change yet. And maybe it's worthwhile. And I don't know how expensive or inexpensive the ads are. You could speak better to that. But it's like, if you're not great at writing and managing that job posting, you're going to get a lot of people who are like casually interested, and they're going to click on it. It's going to cost you a ton of money. But that's the same way with Google ads too, right? Like,
so
any ad copy you're putting out there, paid ad copy, you've got to have it dialed in.
Yeah. What I would tell you that is really cool about Indeed, and it feels a little like a loophole and a cheat code, and so at some point they might close it up, but you have 72 hours from any applicant applying to reject the application and not pay for it. And
That's
so
amazing.
the language Indeed uses is that they'll replace the candidate. But if you shut off the advertising for the job listing after rejecting a whole bunch of people, it doesn't replace them and you don't get charged. So you have the opportunity to get a bunch of paid applications. And if you look and you're like, this person has no relevant experience and no comparable experience. Right. I go through and I reject a lot of just like random stuff that's like, doesn't feel, if I have, I can afford to pay in the budget for 6 or 7 applicants to stay on and actually be interviewed. And I've got 6 or 7 guys with 2 years of industry experience. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take them over fast food employees, even though someone who's worked at a McDonald's for 2 or 3 years is probably like, they bust their ass. So like they are probably a decent candidate, but if I've got guys with experience who already know the field, I'd rather have them come in the door and get that interview, just like selfishly for my client's benefit.
100%. I don't think it's selfish. I think it's smart.
Yeah. The other big thing with Indeed that I love is, so that's the cheat code. So please use that to get
that's
more
brilliant. Out of Indeed. I had no idea. I love it.
Dude, they will come for your wallet. The way that Indeed is set up is
it's like Home Advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like the default settings, if you just run an ad campaign with what they want you to do, they will literally pull thousands of dollars out of your bank account over a weekend. We had how I discovered the loophole.
Don't get me started on these on these services.
It's ridiculous. We discovered that loophole because a client was about to get billed $1,500 when that was not what we had set the campaign for. Their website had an issue. And I was getting like, not 404, the like bad server gateway error messages, like the website was being like overtaxed while I was setting up the post. But everything had like, the settings were good. And then the next morning I wake up and they have like 80 applicants. And I was like, that's not correct.
That's not normal.
So the other cool thing on Indeed is that you can go in and invite people to apply once you've sponsored the job. Yeah. So I scroll through and I look for those pain point jobs. If there's an Amazon warehouse in your area, and there probably is, that's a pretty horrible place to work. Like they got in trouble not that long ago for like refusing to air condition the warehouses. And so people are in these like super hot buildings filled with cardboard, insulation in the summer. People are passing out on the job.
Don't be worried about if they can handle the heat, right? Like they can handle the heat. Don't be worried about if they can handle the weather. Like they've worked in these warehouses. They're certainly okay. I'm with you, man. I agree.
The worst landscaping company takes better care of their employees than letting people pass out on the job. So like you are a like vastly better employer than an Amazon warehouse. And so go poach those people.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so Indeed letting you invite people to apply, and then you don't get charged unless they choose to apply, and then you don't reject them within the 72 hours. Right. So you get it. I invite a lot of people, and then I have the opportunity to kind of clean up on the back end for people.
Yeah. And I would geofence the crap out of that warehouse.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I would be doing Facebook wise to get people to notice you for the first time.
Absolutely. Well, you can even, not just Facebook, right? Because you can do it with Facebook, but isn't there are other platforms that let you geofence, like while they're playing, you get like an ad that pops up while they're playing Candy Crush and all those other digital things, right? That they're doing on their phones, whatever other games they're playing. There's like these, again, it's like an aggregator. You plug it in, and as long as you've got the dimensions right and everything like that, it can be like sick of working without air conditioning or like whatever it is you want to say. You can just like go directly after the employer, what are they're not going to know unless one of their employees takes it and shows their boss, and then they're going to say, why are you looking for jobs? So I'm with you, man.
So big things here. If you're doing this in-house, you want to keep the posting fresh. I think the best way to do that is update that top level thing they're seeing, what Indeed's calling the job title, what we're calling the headline. You want to be refreshing that every couple of weeks to make sure that it's staying fresh, especially if you're spending on it. You don't want to be spending to get the same headline in front of the same people. So I would start tweaking job title, looking at the job description, and maybe pulling another benefit to the top. If something is not getting applications anymore, then maybe consider like which paragraph you lead with, so that you're maybe leaning on a different pain point or leaning on a different benefit, so that you'll get people who have maybe seen the first paragraph and it didn't hit for them. So now you've switched it up so that you're trying to get them on the second paragraph. And hopefully that's just rearranging things, because job descriptions usually don't flow like a normal written piece. So you can hopefully just rearrange things without having to do a lot of extra work.
Yeah, I think that's really, really smart. And I think, again, if you're listening to this, the main takeaway that Cody has said, and the main takeaway that I would reiterate to you is make sure that whatever language you put in there, and I love the idea of the video. I didn't know you could do that on Indeed. I have literally never seen an Indeed video or Indeed posting with a video in it. So like that distinguishes you in and of itself. But make sure that that's as attractive and the language in there is as dialed in as possible for the type of person that you want to attract. And so that ideal candidate, like you should have an age range in mind. You should have like, are they currently employed or are they a college student? What industry are they currently working in? Maybe it's a green industry, maybe it's not. Maybe you work somewhere else that has another, large pool of manual labor worker and you want to steal from those, poach them. Whatever it is, are they married? Have those things in mind, because that all informs the type of language that you use, right? So like if that person's married, you want them in their young mid 20s, but you want a young married person, well, then you need to be talking about the benefits that you're offering, the insurance and retirement and things like that in that job ad. If you want a young single, 18 to 20-year-old, it doesn't matter. That's probably not quite as important to them. So like you have to have those things in mind before you even start putting a posting out there. That ideal candidate, who is that person you want to click apply, and tailor everything around them.
Absolutely. And that's, for guys that have been on the channel for a while, that's exactly what we talk about in your regular marketing. So this is all about just applying the skills you've been developing to grow the business to your recruiting efforts. Jay, thank you so much for hopping on with me again. And next time, let's not wait so long. I'll get you back on way sooner.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. If you are listening to the podcast, please leave a rating and a review. It helps spread the word and helps more business owners find the show and grow their business at Lightspeed.